Hello, everybody. Welcome to the link. I'm your moderator of this episode, Dwayne Savid, and your new favorite prevention training specialist. Now I'm just playing.
I will always be the viewer's choice, honey. Yes, I will.
Yes, you will, Daniel. As I said, welcome to the link in collaboration with APLA Health and Pyro Media. Funded by the CDC. You know, they give us the green so we can give y'all this mean.
What?
I don't know, y'all. This is my first time.
This is your first time, and I'm so excited.
I was going somewhere with you.
Hey, Dante.
That was the janitor. Don't worry about that.
So today,
Kidding! Jokes! It's jokes! It's the jokes!
I have with me are your regular co-hosts that you usually see. You have Kai, Daniel, and Ty. How are y'all doing, y'all?
Hi. We're doing.
It's too late.
The hair just was not trying to be done today. Got the two flags right behind me looking fabulous. You know, so I'm good.
And I'm broadcasting live from a closet.
It's
You are not in the closet.
We are going through so many changes here at APLA Health because we've got so much
They
coming.
put me back in the closet, Kai. Stop trying to make it.
We don't do that here. We never do that here. Ever. I'm looking in the camera, so you all know we don't do that here.
You can be out here, okay? You can be out here.
Out here. Ooh, foreshadowing. Anyway.
Anywho, so let's get right onto it, y'all. What's popping? What's new in the street?
What's happening? It's been a while. I haven't been on the show in a while, it feels like.
You
You haven't. Welcome back.
Where am I? I'm working sometimes.
Right.
You know, 1 week you were ill, you weren't feeling well, we wish you well.
Yeah.
You know, but what has everybody been like listening to? Like, has there been like any new music, any new shows? Like, I know for me, I got introduced to this really amazing show called Motherland, Fort Salem.
Oh.
And it is so good. It is so good. Now, both finales of both seasons pissed me all the way off. But it is such a good show. The premise of the show is basically like witches are the militia of the world. Like every country, their entire militia is just witches. And it follows these three young cadets, young privates by the name of Abigail, Rael, and Tally.
Wow.
And they have been formed as a unit. And so you kind of follow them in the midst of this larger scheme of things. But when I tell you this show is so good, it caught me literally the first episode. And the person that introduced it to me thought that he knew that I was going to love it. But, you know, have you ever watched something with somebody and they're like, they want you to view it the way that they view it?
Yes.
I was not there for it. I was in my phone, honey, looking at the screen
Oh,
like, yeah, this is cute.
But you said you
But then I got into it.
You know what I don't like though? I don't like when you watch something with somebody and they've already seen it before and like they start mouthing or saying what they're saying every time. And it's like, stop being extra.
Oh, see, I'm the person who will look at you to see how you're enjoying it. If I've recommended it, if we're watching,
I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that.
Like this.
I talk back. Like, I talk to the screen. I have conversation. And it's not necessarily I'm talking to the person that I'm with, but I talk. And most people don't like that. I understand it.
No.
But
If it's the first time I've seen something, shh. But if I've seen it again, then I talk.
Okay, I'll be talking.
But I'm not respecting.
I'm like, what are you doing? This is dumb.
For real.
It's wild for me. So I guess
it's off. I don't like it.
We can go to the movies together, Daniel. It's okay.
Thank you.
So kind of going in light with television shows, I want to talk about someone who is getting renewed for a second season on their Netflix show. And I think this is a really big conversation that I've been seeing a lot of, and it's kind of a rebuild conversation that's been happening for years at this point, and that's the use of Black culture to gain fame or gain recognition. And then once that has happened, then you kind of all of a sudden act different, talk different, hold yourself differently. And the example I'm going to be using for today is Aquafina. You might have seen Aquafina in Ocean's 8. She was in.
I love her.
Oh. She was in the new Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings Marvel movie coming out. She was also in the Disney's Raya the Last Dragon as the voice of the dragon. And one of the comments or one of the observations that has been made is when Awkwafina first started in her Ocean's 8 movie, even when she was in Crazy Rich Asians, or when she was a rapper, she talked different. And
was she a rapper?
Yeah, she was. And so one of the ways that a lot of people are pointing out is she used to speak in AAVE, African American Vernacular English.
What some people might call the black accent.
Black accent. But then recently she did an interview with Vice, and they asked her just kind of, would you ever put on an Asian accent? And what she said is kind of one of those pots calling the kettle black moments. She's like, I would never do an accent because it is disrespectful to the culture. It's disrespectful to Asian people. And so people are pointing out like, well, what about the Black community? You use this persona to kind of create using a Black cultural movement or Black culture. And now it's disrespectful to have an accent, but you had it in 3 of your movies. So
And
what do you all
continue to have it?
Maybe, because that's also a thing we don't see as much anymore, right? And the one that she won Best Actress for Golden Globes, and I can't remember what it's called. It's like the send off where her grandmother has passed and she knew she didn't have Black accent. And a lot of the
So you know what? Really quickly, I will say I've noticed that when people get called out on that, it's usually I would never do that if it helped them become a millionaire or gave them some sort of like recognition, or I would never do that, blah, 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 blah. Many people don't realize a lot of these celebrities, even though if they are pretending or talking a specific way or using Black scent, they deny it after they've gotten to that pinnacle that they want. And then they start going into, well, this is how I usually talk. So, now I'm just going to move forward talking like this. It's like, no, your coin came from you being Aquafina. So it's kind of like you can't really deny the influence of trying to use Black scent because people thought it was funny. It was like a funny thing for her to use. So yeah, no, you can't sit there and lie now and just be like, oh, hey, I would never do that. Girl, you already did it and you got money from it. You can't just sit there and say, you're going to do it.
I think this is what Aquafina brings light to. It's the fact that you won't do it for your own, but you don't have a problem doing it with other cultures and with other ethnic groups. And my thing is, I have a very large disdain for any non-Black individual who uses Black culture, Black scent, whatever. If you ain't Black and you using Black things to push you into fame and stardom, I have a problem with that. And I'm gonna bring up a person that a lot of people probably love and adore, Justin Timberlake. When Justin Timberlake was in NSYNC, and he was very early on in his career, it was his image, his language, it was very, very much Black culture. It was just appropriating Black culture. And now you see him more, since he got his white wife, and his little family and whatnot, and
he had a large shirt on.
You don't really see. You see more of his caucus side. You don't get to see what we saw when he first came out. And a lot of people will say, well, we grow, we change as people. No, sweetie, you jumped into a culture that you knew was the bomb. You jumped into a culture that you knew makes movements. You jumped into a culture that you knew changes the game. And when it served you and got you to where you wanted it to go, you left it in the dust. Because let's not also forget that a lot of these people who use Black scent and Black, appropriate Black culture, we also get into a space that when Black issues come up, they are very silent. So Aquafina, you or whatever your name is,
and I think Daniel, I think that's the big point too. It's like you built your career off of another culture, but you can't kind of stand in that culture for protection, or you can't stand in that culture and be an ally, right? You can't be an ally if you deny, kind of using the people that you aren't helping. Is that?
And it's interesting to me that Blackness is the only culture or whatever that people will use with this excuse. Well, that's just who I grew up around. I don't hear that about any other cultural ethnic group ever in my life.
Ever.
Yeah.
I dress like this. I talk like this because I grew up around Black.
Even on the flip side of that, like when people say, "Oh, remember how when people used to, oh, you talk white," if you talk like in a proper, whatever proper would be tone, Black people don't say, "Well, I grew up around white people," because Black people are educated. It's a weird difference when you hear, "Oh, well, I talk Black because I was around Black people."
But the difference in talking white was also a degradation because it was to incite this notion that Black people didn't have education. So when Black people got told they talk white, they got defensive and said, no, I don't, because proper English is not a white thing. It's not a white.
And I say that to say on the other side of that couldn't be used as an excuse. Oh, I grew up around white people. Black people can talk. They talk educated, but there's no way of talking. There's no way unless you are using Black scent.
Yeah, and I think too, because we are really focusing, and obviously with our examples, Aquafina, but we do see it sometimes too in the Latinx community. I can think of an artist, a music artist that I actually enjoy her music, but we have to bring to light Rosalia. Rosalia is from Spain, right? But she passes herself off quite often as a Latina, someone who is from
I like
America,
Rosalia.
Latin American culture. We also see her with these really, really long nails, this kind of cholo culture, but that's not Spain.
Oh, I don't know her.
That's
It's not. You know what?
Everybody Kelly doing. I
Until
don't
you brought
know.
that up, Kai, until you brought that up, I never really noticed it. So I'm glad that I love coming on the link. I learned things, but I love Rosalia. I love her.
But yeah, and I think it's a really big conversation to have is oftentimes when we're trying to appeal to the masses, the people that we're appealing to are, the people who are really the cultural movers, Black and brown folk. So it is one of those things, and it can happen in Black and brown folk as well, as we see with Aquafina, as we see with people of color. Not all people of color are in the same kind of hierarchy of kind of, I don't want to say of oppression, but of what we see systemically oftentimes. So because obviously we know right now the Asian community, is dealing with a spike, a huge rise of anti-Asian sentiment, but we also have to be mindful.
But what does that mean? We've been dealing with anti-Black movement
and
forever.
I think that's a really great.
What are we talking about?
I think that's a common thing, but I think you have to be careful in that. Is you can't say, well, yeah, they might be doing it, but we've been dealing with it forever. It's one of those, we're dealing with it, they're dealing with it. But oftentimes in Asian specifically, we do see kind of proximity to whiteness, which is a conversation that should be happening as well. So it's not saying that Asian people aren't experiencing oppression.
But I think you said it without saying there's a hierarchy to privilege.
Correct.
I think that's what it is. It's not necessarily the oppression. Like we all have our own cultural oppression, whatever communities that we belong. But there is a hierarchy to privilege. And let's just face it, as historically, Asian culture has been more approximate to whiteness and more privileged than other POC groups. That's a historical fact. That's not an opinion.
I will say that just because there's
that might lean more towards
but yes, you are correct. And I also think a lot of times what we see is any kind of like Asian racist kind of movements, even through a government lens, we do see a kind of reparational act to it. Because we do know in World War II, there were Asian internment camps here in America based off of that. But everyone who was in those camps got some kind of reparation for their times. They were paid back. They were kind of given because the country recognized how horrible they were to this population. We also know here in California, there is a huge anti-Chinese sentiment that goes back to basically times of settlement, where we have things like Chinatown and stuff like that is because past-wise. But yes, I just want to put that little in there.
I love God.
I like to look at everything. But Aquafina, stop doing it.
Yeah, girl.
And acknowledge it.
Okay. Or at least if you're going to say, I'm not going to do it for Asian culture, but I do apologize because I've used this.
Right.
To
and I saw a really good comment someone made. They're like, it's the same kind of situation where we saw with Miley Cyrus. When Miley Cyrus was going through her kind of black phase, it's like people.
I like Black Miley Cyrus though.
Look, 23. I played 23.
It was fun.
Walter said the same thing.
But it's one of those things where it's like people grow, people change, but we still have to acknowledge the things that they did. And we can hold them accountable, but just going forward, they should be mindful as well.
But I think that's the thing that not that we getting off Aquafina, but going back to Miley really quick, like I think that was the one thing that I could really appreciate about Miley and her blackface. Like she knew it was a blackface. She knew she acknowledged it.
She approached it like it was a blackface and like made no effort to say this is going to be me in 5 years. She was just like, I'm having fun. I'm hanging out with black people and this is what we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and now I'm done. Where's my blonde wig?
Oh, I can't. I know. Sorry, everyone. My topics tend to get so heavy. I didn't even get into Afghanistan. If you're watching right now and you're seeing what's happening with Afghanistan, if you want to have a conversation with me, we can have a private conversation after this. Also, support Haiti. They did have an earthquake recently, and it was a really, really bad earthquake.
Yeah.
So if you see any way that you can donate to places in Haiti, keeping in mind Haiti is a largely Black community, please do so. Maybe not the Red Cross. I'm not saying there's anything bad with the Red Cross. They have just had issues in the past getting funds to Haiti. So if you're looking for ways to get involved with the Haiti earthquake relief, you can even reach out to me and we can go for that.
Yes. All right. So we're going to just move along from what's popping into the topic of the episode. Where
I'm excited for the day.
Okay.
I did research for the day, everyone.
Okay.
I can't wait.
Because we will be talking about kinks and fetishes, but with a twist. It's the taboo one. So we've already talked about BDSM and we've talked about all the regulars and things of that nature. But what about the really taboo ones? Like what about the ones that when you say like, oh, like I like, for instance, like I like scatting. I like people to just be like down all on this choco stick, okay? Like, what about those? Let's get into it. I think for me, why do you think some of them are like really like taboo? Do you think it's like a health factor or like what are we thinking, guys? Like why is this so like?
Who do you want to answer first?
I like when Daniel goes.
Oh gosh. Let's see. Okay, so why are some fetishes and kinks more taboo than others? I think at the end of the day, I think that what anyone does in the bedroom, number one, it's your business. But I do think that when that business starts to become a little bit more mainstream, there's going to be a transitional period. You know, like for instance, with BDSM, a lot of people did not know what BDSM was in a mainstream way until the movie 50 Shades of Grey, which in my opinion was a horrible display and representation of BDSM, but that's my own personal opinion. I know a lot of people who are part of the BDSM community who saw that movie that did not enjoy it, but it introduced a conversation. It introduced a conversation and a concept that a lot of people thought about, read about, saw in certain things, saw in porn, and really didn't, you know, secretly wanted to try it. And so they started to do that. And so those types of fetishes and kinks became a little bit more socially acceptable because they became mainstream. Anytime you have something that becomes a part of the norm, you're not going to really see a lot of taboo. And so everything that kind of stays in the closet or everything that kind of stays in the dark is always going to have that kind of like feel. Like when we talk about scat play, you mentioned scat play and you define what scat play is. People are going to get that face that we all generally get when we don't like something. That kind of,
oh my God, you like dookie on your dick.
Oh, so
right. You know, so I think that it's because it's at the base level, at the psychological level. It's one of those things where if I'm by myself, I don't want to share. But if I know that I'm not by myself, I'm more comfortable sharing.
Yeah.
And I think too, one of the things is a lot of times there's lack of education, right? What you don't know becomes taboo, scary, whatever. Because I have done a lot of research for this episode, specifically with scat play. So I'm actually really excited we're talking about it. And we'll get into that later. But it is one of those things. A lot of times, some of these more taboo kind of topics are dealing with kind of bodily functions that we inherently think of as gross, nasty. And because in this country, specifically America, you know, we always say sex sells, but we don't actually want to talk about it. We actually don't want to do anything that isn't kind of missionary, lights off.
Right.
You know, just kind of putting your pee through what do straight men? They're boxers. They just put the penis through the hole and they call that a day, wearing their socks and t-shirt and all that, which I mean, if you like clothes, go for it. But it is one of those things that we as a country are sexually repressed in the sense that we just don't experiment and have fun. And we don't talk about it. So these things I think are always more taboo. But when you learn about a lot of it, you're realizing that like, oh, I kind of like that, right? Like with like concussion play, like sometimes a lot of us like to get a little slap here and there. That's a kink. Anal play is a kink. Rimming, like giving, rimming, licking someone's booty hole is actually part of scat play. And
tongue punch on the booty hole, yes.
And you really think about it, where's that poop come out of? Where you put your tongue. And yes, we do clean, and yes, there are things that go along with it, but it is still kind of a form of it all. But it's just we don't name it properly, or we don't actually give it kind of what it really is. We kind of like say, oh, well, I'll lick your butthole, but don't you dare poop on me. Girl, it's all coming from it.
Right.
It's one of those conversations. It's a lot of those conversations. And I do want to preface too, none of us are experts on kind of the topics that we're talking about. This is us coming from a really honest place. And it also encouraged a lot of us to like do some research.
Yeah.
And I think that is one thing I want people to watch today. If any of these conversations that we're having is something that you're interested in, you do have to search a little bit. but there are a lot of resources here, especially in LA or just on the internet. So definitely, if you think of something is gross or look it up.
I guarantee you, if you're into it, there's a Facebook group for
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I promise you.
Oh, yes.
Or a
I
Reddit
promise
group.
you.
The dark hole of Facebook groups I got into while I was doing scat play research for this, I am sure my work computer email is going to get like
It was for work.
flagged, but it was research.
It was for research.
Well, I haven't gotten anything yet. And I was definitely like
Not
going
yet.
for 2 weeks trying to figure this out.
Dwayne, why do you think that it's such a taboo? Why do you think some kinks are more kind of like accepted over others?
If I can be honest, it's just because I think a lot of America is limited. Just the world in general is limited. A lot of people are just scared of freedom. They say they want it, but then don't want to pay the cost to be free, if that makes sense, because there's a lot of backlash. There's a lot of like looking for acceptance. There's a lot of, wanting to be affirmed by your peers. But I think a lot of people fail to realize that your peers don't pay your bills. Your peers do not feed you always. Your peers are not going to make you happy. Like, they're not in charge of your happiness.
And
Like,
half of them aren't in your bedroom.
okay. I mean, they might be.
They might be.
Because,
Hey,
some people love, the double pin.
healthy
So-
sex lives are great. What about you, Ty?
You know what? As someone who has done all things for the most part, all things in my heyday, I have to answer the question first. I think that you all hit it on the head. It's more so just the idea that people want your sex to be a specific way because it makes them comfortable, right? And it's like, well, why does my sex have to make you comfortable if we're not having it? It's also when people want to know who you're having sex with. It's very similar, in my opinion. But like I was saying earlier, as someone who has done all things that you can imagine or think of, there are a lot of kinks that I hear sometimes, and I like squirm a little bit, not for the dissatisfaction of it or saying, ooh, that's nasty, but more so, I remember that time that I did that and whether or not I liked it or not. So I would definitely say for everybody watching today, if you are going to take something from this, if you are interested, comfortable, and want to research this even more and even try it, by all means do it. Because like Daniel said, you're not going to know what you like until you do it. And I'm a very sexual person. So I've tried everything that we're about to talk about today.
Well, getting into that, do you guys think that like kinks differ between like within the LGBTQIA plus community and like the cishet spaces? Like, I know for me, I know a lot of my straight counterparts and family members think that like, anal is like a big no-no. Or like, why do I need to put it in there? Like, I have a whole French hole. Why is it going in there?
I say yes. I think there are differences in each community, right? In the cishet community, we don't see fisting as much as we see, I think, as we do in the LGBTQ plus community, especially with like porn, at least. Just the heterosexual porn I see, I don't often see fisting. I do see for them, they're higher, more up there. Kinks are with anal and vaginal play, and it's like, you guys are getting crazy over here.
Wow. There's one in the pooper and one in the shooter, okay?
It was the shimmy for me. It was the shimmy for me.
But I can say, because I did specific research for scat play, we aren't seeing much differences with like population wise. One thing that they did was people who do BDSM, they also saw if they did scat play, because oftentimes there's like a power thing involved in it. And you're seeing 18% of heterosexual people, 17% of LGBTQ plus populations that do BDSM also do scat play. So I think there's not a difference. I just think it's the acts we do, right? For me, a taboo kink is vaginal sex, maybe. As a gay man who doesn't have sex with vagina sometimes, that might
I'll definitely say you did stump me, because that's the one thing that we talk about today that I've not done.
We got him, y'all.
That is definitely something that, like, for me as a gay man who tends to focus more so on anal play, vaginal play is a little bit more of a kink. But my cis heterosexual counterpart will say that's just sex. So, I do think there's a hierarchy based off of what we're doing.
I mean, if we're looking at like overall kinks and fetishes that both communities can agree are kinks and fetishes, I don't think that there's a lot of difference in regards to do we do these and they don't do those? I just think it's a variance of how much we see it. Like I know in my own personal experience, I have seen and I see a lot, especially online or like in porn video comments and things. Heterosexual folks have a really big thing for incest play.
Oh, but the gay men are getting there too. Lately, everyone's
but the whole like my dad, my uncle, my brother, my cousin, like that whole thing. It's not for me. I am not shaming anyone. If that is your thing, that is your thing. It is not for I. But I do see that more in a cis het space.
No.
As far as fisting, I would have to disagree because I do see a lot of that with cis het porn, like fisting the vagina.
Oh, in the vagina. Yeah. I don't look at that.
Not necessarily anal fisting, but actual fisting the vagina. Absolutely. Like we came out of there, so large things can go in there. But I feel like on the reverse in the LGBTQI plus space, I see a lot. Unfortunately, I see a lot more race play in the bedroom as it pertains to like master slave mentality. Again, not for I. It's not for me. I'm not shaming anybody, but I do notice that race play is huge. Between white and black gays, at least.
Dang, somebody's playing Harriet Tubman in their bedroom, Daniel?
I actually, yes.
That's the answer to the question. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what about you, Ty? What do you think? Like, is it like a big differ, or are you not seeing the difference?
I agree with Daniel. A lot of the similarities are there, so you don't really see much of a difference. I do think that the only thing that I don't really see with heterosexual porn or hear from my straight friends is that they've ever fisted their partner. And I do see that in gay space, LGBTQI plus spaces. But then also at the same time, the incest play is rampant in the gay community as well. I can't tell you how many times I scroll down Twitter and it's like having sex with my uncle today, and it's like, do you, baby? But that's not really your uncle. The production company just wanted you to say that. Not letting anybody's yum. Just know what's real and what's not real.
I always have questions about that too.
Me too. Like know what's real and what's not real. And like companies really like cast people to look alike. These people are not really related. Like so, just know what's real and what's not real when you are looking to explore certain options.
And I mean, if you're okay with incest, that's your thing. There might be something.
That's your thing, baby.
Okay, story time. I had someone, and this is a trigger warning for anybody that's watching right now. I had someone that I was dating years ago, and he wanted to get sexual.
Ooh.
And I had shared with him my molestation story in the midst of us getting to know each other. And we were having a conversation about what type of sex we enjoy. And this individual looked me dead in my face and said, I would love to pretend like I was the cousin that molested you.
Oh.
And I was like, first of all,
making faces.
Kevin, you're my cousin. No, that's just automatically a no for me. But then to associate it with my drama, and his reasoning was, he was like, I want to help you overcome that trauma, and maybe if you see the enjoyment of it.
Sounds like a gaslight to me.
I was like, are you kidding me? But
excuse me? Absolutely not, baby. No.
I never forgot that moment. So but that's the thing. It's like, for me, it's hard to imagine incest play because I have trauma attached to it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like I've heard other people talk about, oh, my cousins is fine. If we weren't cousins, if we weren't related, we would. That's just not in my realm of thought because again, trauma. And sometimes I want to know like how do you look at that way?
Daniel. Okay, like what if you were in a relationship and like your partner wanted to be adventurous and like experiment, and I mean maybe not be your cousin, but like experiment in the whole like incestual thing, or maybe another
Like you're a different person, they're a different person, but your different people are related. Does that make sense?
No.
And it made sense to me, Ty.
I get what you're saying.
But I think Daniel kind of what it is, and I think that's a really good example of have those conversations so that you can say no.
Okay.
Yeah, let it be a boundary.
Consent.
And I think that's another thing when we talk about fetishes and kinks, even when we talk about these taboo fetishes and kinks, the idea of consent, the idea of creating those boundaries,
they're always there.
Like they should always be present, because I do think that whether we're talking about mainstream kinks and fetishes or, taboo kinks and fetishes, one of the things that often comes up for a lot of people is they feel guilted or shamed into trying these things because then they're not considered freaky, or they're not considered, freaky enough.
Or they're approved.
And it's like,
girl, if you're approved, be approved.
Okay.
And I think it's also the conversation of vanilla sex isn't bad sex. It's just vanilla. I like vanilla ice cream. Sometimes I want vanilla ice cream.
That's different.
Sometimes I want vanilla ice cream.
Look.
In the play.
But you know what?
I might drizzle a little caramel sauce on it, a little bit of honey.
Honey boots.
Sometimes I can devote 15 minutes. In that 15 minutes, I don't want to pull out all the bells and whistles. I got a destination. You got a destination. Let's get there. So there's nothing wrong with vanilla sex, everybody. But I mean, spice it up a little bit. Just a little. Okay, a lot.
I put some seasoning on it. Okay, don't give me boiled chicken with nothing.
Yeah, boiled chicken with nothing.
Did you say? Wait a minute. Did you say boiled chicken with nothing?
First of all, I know what that tastes like, and it's
garlic.
It's not as bad.
No pepper. No
chili. Who is boiling chicken with no seasoning? Like, oh my God, why?
Well, we know why. I have stomach problems, so I can't eat foods, everybody.
I've tasted it because I boiled it for a dog I was dog sitting once.
Put it in soup. Just put it in soup, everyone. Yeah.
So that is the end of our first half of the link. We're going to take a brief commercial break, but stay tuned because we have more taboo.
I'm going to talk about scat.
Yeah.
Are you in need of a quick and easy way to know your HIV status? Swab and Chill is a discreet way to learn your status in the comfort of your own home. The process gives you results in 20 minutes. Swab the upper gums, swab the lower gums, and voila! Simply follow the colorful step-by-step instructions located inside the kit. Or call APLA and we can assist you virtually. In addition, all kits include condoms and lube for that penetrative fun. For our trans clients, we have Swab and Chill Plus, a customizable kit for trans-specific needs. And we haven't forgotten about COVID either. All kits include personal protection gear, like face masks, comfortable yet stylish. A personal touch tool for dealing with those germ-infested handles and ATM keypads. Wet wipes for those little messes that need cleaning up. Also, keep that summer body protected with Swab and Chill sunscreen. And don't forget about our fanny packs for those quick trips to the store. All this can be yours. Simply call Swab and Chill at 323-329-9713 or email us at swabandchill@apla.org. We would love for you to be part of our Swab and Chill family.
Come swab and chill with us!
Welcome back, y'all. I don't really like how you abruptly popping up that's like that. I feel really okay, I want a little stuff like fade me in. Like, give me some theme or something. I don't know.
Homie is working hard for us.
Right. That's a StreamYard question.
Okay. We'll talk later, but welcome back to the link, y'all, and we're talking about like fears, fetishes, and kinks and taboo things like that. So like that. Mommy, I will stay ready. But moving forward, I have another question for y'all. So what are some misconceptions surrounding things like scat play or like wet and messy play, and even what some would consider like extreme role play?
Extreme. Look at you.
I know we all know what these things mean, but we want to like kind of describe what these things are for our viewers who may not know what scat, wham, or extreme role play is.
Ooh, who wants to go first? I can go first because I got.
You go, Kai.
You go, Kai.
You go, Kai. You got notes.
I came with notes today.
I've never seen Kai with notes.
Stuff in his because I've
never seen you with a tablet. First of all.
Nah, he never needed it.
So let me just say, I actually was really, really excited about this because this is one of those things. I think oftentimes when we work in sex, we think we know it all. We think because I work in sex every single day, I know about all the types of sex, and I don't. And scat play has been one of those things I've known and it's existed. I've kind of known general things, but I didn't know. So scat play is the play with fecal matter. So that could be watching someone actually poop, you pooping yourself. It can be ingestion of poop. It can be putting poop on your body, on your hands, kind of just smelling it. So it's a lot of different things. As I mentioned before,
Put it in a cup.
In a cup. We all watched that video when we were teenagers.
Okay.
Or did.
But it's also one of those things too, anal play, where you're just, rimming someone. That could be scat play too, because there can be poop in there. And if you're looking for it, then it becomes scat play. Kwame said he didn't watch Two Girls, One Cup.
Yes, he did. We watched it together.
So if you're doing it, the trigger warning for that. That is very intense.
Kwame, you don't want to see Two Girls, One Cup.
No, I think if you're interested, definitely look it up.
You should definitely look it up.
But for scat play, there are things that for safety, I think a lot of times people think it's gross, it's yucky, like it's dangerous. And I think some of the things that people don't realize for scat play is there are safety precautions. Like one, definitely make sure that you're vaccinated for hepatitis A and B, right? Because in our fecal matter, things like the hep virus can be present. So you have to really, really make sure that you are taking care of yourself that way. So making sure you're fully vaccinated, because we love vaccinations here at APLA Health. But that's also the case for if you're just doing a rim job, you should still be vaccinated because they still have hep there. Also things like E. coli, salmonella, stuff like that. So when you're doing ingestion,
you can get salmonella from.
You can.
Wow.
You can get food poisoning from someone else's poop and your own poop.
So not just unclean chicken and fish. Wow.
And turtles too. If you have turtles, be really, really careful.
Oh, I did have turtles.
But it's also one of those things too. One of the reasons people say like, ew, it's gross. There's actually medical procedures that are good for your gut where it's called a fecal transplant, where you take someone else's fecal matter and you transplant it in there because there are good beneficial bacteria as well.
Transplant it where, Kai?
Put it in your where your poop is, in your gut. I didn't look up the exact.
So the transplant is basically you're taking someone else's poop and you're putting it inside your body, either through the rectum or through.
I think they do rectum mostly. I don't
rectum
know.
mostly.
Wow. But with scat play, because I don't want to get too hung up on the fecal transplant, because that's not sexy. It's just healthy. But also things to make sure you could have too. Towels, lots of towels, wet wipes. Having a fleet on hand is something that people don't really talk about. Gloves, latex gloves are really important. Latex sheets. Also, no one talks about the foods you should eat, because that's really important. Because there are foods like, and I got a list, so I'm going to read them. Okay. Things that you should avoid. If you're interested in scat play, if you want to have a more positive experience, these are the foods you should probably avoid about 24 hours beforehand, because it takes a little while for your body to digest things. So first is raw vegetables that are hard, because what happens is our body can't break them down. So then your body has to work really, really hard, which creates more stomach acid, more kind of a sulfuric acid, which gives your poop that poop smell, and also can make it really, really sour. Also things like fish, which we understand, you eat fish and you're like, oof, my farts are smelling. If your farts smell bad, your poop smells bad. Keep that in mind. So, a lot of times we talk about having a really good high fiber diet, which is great. Having a high fiber diet is helpful for everyone, and with scat play, you want that too. But making sure the foods that you're eating are the right fibers. Avoid milk, avoid nuts, because apparently they add a texture which could be a little bit painful or maybe just undesirable. With that, my own personal thing is maybe avoid corn because we can't always digest corn. So you might not want to see corn kernels. Avoid wheat, avoid alcohol, tomato sauce because it is really, really acidic. So do that. But
what can I eat?
No tequila shots.
So one of the reasons why is because all of these things cause one of two aspects to happen during scat play. Number one, it does change the texture. And sometimes if you're using penetration, if you're doing penetrative sex with scat play, different textures, like if kern kernels or things that have sharp edges that come out whole, it can really start to tear the inside of your rectum.
It sounds like all I can do is ramen noodles.
You don't want that. But also it is for the smell. Most people, when they think of scat play, their automatic turnoff is the smell. But there are things that you can eat that either...
Oh, I had those.
Because you got the list. There are things that you can take that actually minimize the actual smell that we're all used to smelling when we poop.
Yeah.
So what are those things, Kai?
So some of the things that you could do to
You're
make
a
scat
scat
play.
specialist today.
No, and I actually am really proud of this.
Real quick, y'all, real quick. So there is a way to participate in scat play without actually touching scat. I have seen and read. I didn't watch it it wasn't a porn or anything like that. It was kind of like an animated demo. So basically what people do is they take their feces and then they put it in a condom, right?
Oh yeah.
In an elastic
and freeze it.
And freeze it.
And yeah, like, right
it's
on
called an Alaskan pipeline.
Oh, is that what is that? Okay.
It's called an Alaskan
Daniel
pipeline.
actually taught that to me probably about a month and a half ago.
Wow.
But yeah, that is definitely. But here are the things that you can eat to make scat play more enjoyable. So bananas, avocados, cantaloupes, and pears are all fruits that are all really, really good for you because they are good for fiber, but they are soft. And they also good sugar smell. Things like soft vegetables are great. So things like squash, zucchini, eggplant. Thank you. If you boil those, that's how you should cook them because it makes them even softer. Because what it is, it's good fiber, it's good for your gut, but it also can be broken down really, really easy, which is what you want. Because in scat play, you don't want hard poop, but you also don't want like just liquid. You want some consistency. It's got to hold its shape a little bit, but still can be squished. Things like Nutella apparently are really, really good. Sugar water. A lot of people are saying cake. I don't think that's very healthy, but the high sugar content is going to make the scat a little bit sweeter.
Wow, cake on my cake.
I love this. Really quick, because I know I just talked so much about scat today. But mashed potatoes, baby foods are really, really great. And then things that you can eat that are not food, but still healthy to eat, safe to eat, that can kind of get rid of smells are chlorophyll candies and activated charcoal. What they do is they absorb a lot of that sulfuric acid, so you're not going to get as much smell. So there are people who like to use laxatives for scat play. That's fine. Just be mindful that you don't want to become dependent on those because then you're not pooping naturally and then you're relying on laxatives, and that's not good for your body. So if anyone out there has more questions about scat, reach out to me. I won't give you my information. I'll show you where I got the information so you can start your research process because that's what I want to do, enable you to research.
Come on! But Dwayne, I know that you did some research on your own in regards to WHAM, and you found some interesting things out about WHAM. So can you explain to our viewers what WHAM is and what you got for us?
Okay. I mean, I'm gonna briefly touch on fisting too because I wanted to. I got some facts on that too. But WHAM, for those who missed it or just tuning in, it stands for Wet and Messy Play. Okay.
Which scat can be a part of?
Scat can be a part of it. But what I found out is that it does not just have to be scat or like bodily fluids. Like it can be anything that makes it all like wet and messy and like
jelly.
Yeah, so it can be penny, it can be whipped cream,
sticky.
It could be your wedding cake, you know.
Ooh, in front of everyone? That's fun.
I mean, yeah, you know.
Strategic.
It can be a pie, like American Pie, like when they're putting the things in things, you know. It
that
can be.
Happen.
It did not.
I did. Not for me.
And it's just so many different things. However, you should not try not to get any like sticky or sweet things. And if you have a vagina or a front hole, please avoid that. And definitely the anus. Definitely don't want to get anything too, because you can get a yeast infection, as we found out from Daniel like a couple of weeks ago, in your booty hole.
You can.
You can. You technically can get a yeast infection anywhere that there are parts of the body that touch and are moist. So, like if you have breasts and you're extra moist under your titty and you don't clean properly, you technically can get a yeast infection there.
Daniel, I texted you that in confidence.
Bacteria.
So if you have a dry cootie cat, I guess you have nothing to worry about.
Oh, stop, a dry cootie cat. Don't call it a cootie cat. Actually, I like that.
Okay, what about fisting? Because you mentioned
you said fisting.
I just wanted to briefly touch on the misconception that people, porn, they make it look like you just go right in there. Like it's definitely a process. You start with a nice little like 2, and then a 3. If you have an experienced person, go straight for the 4. Hey, and it's more of like this situation first than it is this.
Like when you try to get a pickle out the pickle jar.
Yes, exactly.
It's the pickle claw. It's the pickle claw.
You gradually.
I'm calling the booty hole the pickle jar from now on, everybody.
Okay. You gradually get it going. Just a few fun facts. Definitely want to have your nails clipped. If you're going to do that. Okay, I am not a good example right now because we have claws.
Just look at me.
Yes. Okay, Daniel is the only one that keeps his hands on deck. I appreciate you.
They're cut.
Hey, not today. But and
lube.
Yeah, and you have lots of lube. Yeah. Do you guys have any additions to that before we move on?
So I do want to talk about extreme role play because a lot of people really don't know what extreme role play is. We know role playing is like nurse, doctor, things like that. Extreme role play is when you are actually really going into the dominant, submissive type of role play, i.e., pet play. Like when you are pretending to be a dog and you have an owner, or if you like to be a baby and you have a parent. And like I mentioned earlier, like race play, the whole slave and master thing. Those are types of extreme role play, and they are kind of frowned upon a lot of times, depending on what type of role playing that you're doing. But the one thing that we really want you to get out there and get the information out is that when you do role play and you get into these characters, you should have a safe word. If there's something happening in your sex play that is just you're not comfortable with or whatever, that safe word needs to be used so that your partner knows, okay, this is the end of the act and scene. Also, make sure that if you are engaging in extreme role play where props or tools or other things are being introduced into sex, again, conversations, consent, make sure that everyone is aware of what is being used, how it's going to be used, and why, and make sure that everybody involved is agreeing to that. So for those of you
properly too.
Sterile. Make sure your tools are sterile.
Yes,
too.
make sure your tools are sterile, especially now in COVID. Okay, because we what did you say, Ty?
I was saying clean it properly as well.
Clean it properly.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I think one thing too with extreme role play that sometimes people don't talk about, that I've actually had a couple conversations, is check-ins after, right? You just went through this a lot of times, this really intense experience. Are we checking in with each other? Especially if you're someone who, was punished or is doing the punishment. There's some psychological things that we need to kind of go through after. Like if you are the person who is the dominant person, do you take that to your outside world? And if you do, is it safe to take it to your outside world? Are you able to be this dominant person like that? Or maybe is that specifically for the bedroom? And then it's also, if you're the submissive person, is that just in the bedroom? Is it not? If someone spent the last hour, spanking you, degrading you, let's check in. How are you doing now? Are you okay? I think that's a really important thing too, that a lot of people don't realize is happening. That no one just goes into these kind of extreme plays and just says, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I don't know. I mean, maybe they do. But a lot of times there are these systems in place to kind of protect everybody.
And then on the opposite side of that, it's like if you were the dominant one, like how I don't think a lot of people think about personalizing it or taking it on. Like, are you okay? Like, did you attach that to your being? Is that like, do you really think that's who you are now? Like, are you okay? Like, can you come back from that? Like, are you still in the role? Like, do you really think you hurt your partner too much? Like,
so I have a question for you guys, and we've all done our research because we were all prepping for this episode. We knew we were going to be talking about this episode. But do you think there are true health concerns when looking at the kinks and the fetishes that we discuss here? Because a lot of times people are ill-informed. You know, they think it's really dangerous, but it's probably really not that dangerous when you get into it.
I think with scat play, there's definitely a higher level of risk, but if you're doing it properly, it's still manageable. Sex is a risky activity just in general because, you know, sexually transmitted diseases, hepatitis for scat play. Those are things that you have to think about. But if you are vaccinated, making sure to kind of keep it away from kind of bodily openings. Don't brush your teeth before and or after. You're creating little micro lesions in your mouth by doing that. Kind of avoid that. Just rinse out your mouth. Use antibacterial soap, not just the good smelling stuff, really the antibacterial. That'll get rid of a lot of the bacteria that is in feces. There's risk involved. And I think with kink especially, that's what makes kink so taboo, is because of the risk, people think it's dangerous, but it's just an extra step, right? It's like driving. Driving is a huge risk. You're more likely to have issues getting in a car accident than you are getting probably hepatitis from scat play if you're vaccinated. But, you know, where do we put the risk at, or who's dangerous? So yes, there's risk, but there's ways to avoid or to minimize.
So what are some of those risks, y'all? Like, I know we've all done our research and we've, you know, mentioned and touched on like the hepatitis and being vaccinated, but like, what else? Like, Ty, what do you think? What are some precautions that people could take?
You know, I like when we talked about consent as it pertains to the extreme role play. I think that sometimes we don't know or realize it in those moments. If someone is causing you bodily harm, whether you like it or not, those effects can be long lasting or long term. So, you know, having your safe word and being cognizant of, wow, that really hurts, and not a sexual way. And speaking up about it, you know, if it's something that you're going to do. Those are the only health risks that I can, you know, attest to. You just want to make sure that you are being as open and honest as possible during those moments. As far as scat play and stuff like that, I can't really speak much to that. But I definitely think that if you are taking all of the necessary precautions, you know, also analyze the risk as well. You know, like Kai mentioned, you can get E. coli from scat play, you know, or people's poop. So, you know, you want to make sure that you take all of those things in consideration, one, and then also two, have those conversations with your partner too.
Nice. Daniel?
I think the biggest thing is conversation. Have a conversation about it. If you come across a kink or a fetish that you are really just unsure about, do your research. Like I said, like Dwayne said, you know, do your research and have that conversation with your partner. Find out what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, and then go from there. Because even though, yes, anytime that you have sex, period, that's a risk. You know, you add anything on top of just regular, what we would consider regular sex. You know, it's gonna be the vanilla sex. You're adding an extra layer of risk. But it's all risky, all of it. Kissing someone you don't know could be risky. Okay. You know, like it's risky. It's all a risk. And so you really have to assess what your risk is, what risk you're willing to take, and just be precautious, be prepared, and equip yourself the best that you can.
Yes.
And if that means scheduling a doctor's appointment after you know you're about to, you know, get wild, or what society considers crazy, maybe lick some blood. I don't know. Like, do it.
Yeah, do it.
What you gotta do for you.
So before we go, I do have a question for everyone. Is anyone going to try something different in the bedroom because of this? Or are y'all open? Ty said that Ty has tried it all.
But I will say, Kai, I did get the urge to go poop on somebody, so that may happen today.
Great. I'm one of those people. I say I'll try anything twice because the first time generally it's always bad.
Right, yeah, that's true. Awkward. Like,
it's fun. Give it a couple goes. But there are definitely things there's a straight up no. I won't be doing extreme race play. That's just where I'm not comfortable with, and my partner knows that, and it's not a budging point for me. But everyone's different. What about y'all? You trying things? You going home?
I might try a few things.
Are we gonna try scat? You don't have to say it. You don't have to say it.
I don't know about that yet. I don't know about that.
I might.
Oh,
No.
look, we're gonna.
Maybe.
Well, what was
You doing
it?
all this research? Are you going to try it?
I don't know. I don't know. This will be a conversation that I definitely, for me, if it were to happen, it would only be with my partner, and it would be a heavy conversation. I have a lot of gastrointestinal things, so my scat might not be the most exciting. But maybe someone out there.
Maybe.
You never know. You never know.
So if you're out there in the scat community, actually reach out to me. I got questions, just for interest.
Definitely the extreme role play too.
You don't think so?
No,
That's
I'm
right.
that.
Oh, you are? Oh, Dwayne said, let's do it.
Yeah. I like a little leash or something. I don't know.
Ooh, no, not for me. But I get it. And I think that's the big thing too, is that ultimately, if anyone tells you they're into something, big saying that we have here at APLA is don't yuck someone's yum. If you're not doing it with them, just say, good for you.
Right.
And just go on with that. Like, that sounds great for you. I love that for you.
Have a good time with it.
Right? You don't have to shame anybody. You don't have to especially if someone is doing a kink, because I think a lot of times for me, when someone says they do a kink, the first thing I go into is safety. Like, oh, just make sure. No. Just say, enjoy it.
Right. Have a good time.
Right.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Ty, Kai, and Daniel for helping me and joining me on this episode of The Link on fetishes and kinks and things of that nature.
Tell us what y'all like.
Okay. Share this live, share this link, check us out, comment, tell us what your favorite parts were, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Ah.